Hello, everybody, and welcome to Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network on theseedsofliberty.com and theconsciousresistance.com. So today we have Marc Malone, who's coming in from Britain. He's a voluntarist, anarchist, free thinker, truth seeker. He's a vocalist and guitarist in a rock band called Torous. And the website is Torous, torus.co.uk. And you can find the Facebook page. It's called Torous, or Twitter at Torous the band. And you can find him on YouTube at Torous UK YouTube channel. So we'll be talking about a little bit about his history, how he came to anarchism, and how it's affected his music, because he's been doing music before becoming an anarchist, and so you can definitely see transformations in that. It's kind of interesting, how that kind of political ideologies, the way we understand politics and government changes everything that we do. So it's always interesting to see that, and also get into a little bit about the history of British common law and the Magna Carta, because I don't know too much about that, but it's just talking about common law in general, how polycentric legal systems, and how that is very anarchistic, and it's fascinating to learn about those type of history of those things. So Mark, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
No worries. Thanks for having me, man. So it's nice to be here.
Yeah. I think you contacted me a few months ago about coming on the show, and you sent me one of your videos, and it seems pretty cool. I always like to support voluntarists, especially if they're content creators. Anything. Bloggers, authors, YouTubers, or musicians or artists of any kind. It's like the way I look at it, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. We attack statism, or we try to educate people about the the illegitimacy of government, and how statism is really basically a lie.
Sure.
It's like the veil that's been covered over our eyes, right, to blind us from the truth, in the words of Morpheus. I really love it.
Cool.
Having you guys on. I've interviewed rappers as well. So it's just awesome to use music to send these messages. So please get into a little bit of your history, and how you came to anarchism. What influenced you? What books, personalities influenced you?
Well, I grew up in a pretty working class, very poor kind of background. When I was kind of growing up, we didn't really have 2 pennies to scrub together. And I think when you grow up pretty poor, you realize the world doesn't work for you. And you kind of go 2 ways with it. You kind of go into a kind of cultural Marxism way, where you start to, we can go into how the state steals money to give it to people and that kind of thing. But before you kind of know about that, you start to think, how do we look after the poor? How do we look after those kind of people? So I think you start to see something's not working for you, and for the majority of people. And then I think as I got a little bit older and I read books it started out with books by people like David Icke and Michael Tsarian and that kind of thing, where they were more based on the system that controls us, and how they control economics and that kind of thing. And then as I went further and further along with it, I started to realize the biggest con is that we have people controlling us in the first place. And I started to realize that we're born free, but somebody tells us along the way that we're not free. Mm-hmm. And somebody tells us along the way that you need to be controlled. There's something wrong with you. You need to be controlled.
Right.
And then it gets to a point where you go, wait a minute, isn't there something wrong with the people that are controlling us as well? Why are they better than us? So why are they controlling us? Why do they have the freedoms that we don't have? And those kind of questions, and that kind of situation. So that's kind of how I came into anarchy, the true meaning of anarchy, not that what we've been told anarchy is. We've been told anarchy is chaos, of course, which it isn't. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of deciphering that, going through the lie, and finding out the true meaning of this thing, true meaning of freedom and anarchy, which I came through people like Mark Passio and Michael Tsarian and Ayn Rand and lots of other kinds of authors and lecturers. And that's pretty much where I'm at now. It's a continuing learning process. You can never know too much,
Yeah. It's like I got into it through peaceful parenting, through Stefan Molyneux, his videos on spanking and corporal punishment, and then through him, I got really into voluntarism and anarchy and stuff like that, and then reading books by Larkin Rose and G. Edward Griffin, Creature from Jekyll Island and stuff like that, and everything just opens up, and one thing that's kind of interesting is before you're exposed to this stuff. I think it's a shock to most people when you see it written down. Like, let's say the way, I don't know if you read Anatomy of the State, Murray Rothbard, but
I haven't. No.
The way
but I know about the author. I know
Murray Rothbard, excellent author, and so he just lays out things very clearly about how a state thrives and is born. And it's like, wow, that's what I was thinking, or even like I didn't know somebody can say that or put that into words the way he did, and it's it's nice when you read that, So it's really it's an enlightening moment, when you come to that point, and I think the first instinct for most people, you're excited, you want to spread it, you want to tell everybody, tell your friends, tell your family, and then you get met with this wall. Everybody puts up this wall like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that wall?
I've had that wall. Yeah, I've had that wall. The funny thing is, I think there's maybe it might seem like we're going a bit off topic there, but I think it is a lot. Not everybody is necessarily ready for the information. There was a time that I definitely wasn't. So it's you've got to be in the right place for it. I think that if everybody knew it instantly, then there would be no growing process. I think you have to grow as a person if you believe in spirituality, then spiritually, if not emotionally, psychologically, but you have to grow to appreciate it and understand it, because there's a difference between knowing and understanding, isn't there? Knowing something and understanding it are different things. You need to really understand it before you can live it and practice it. So I think that it's probably a good thing that not everybody knows it straight away.
Right. I mean, like there's simple concepts like you can't delegate a right you don't have, right? Like non-aggression principle, very simple. Taxation of theft, very simple. Morality is universal, right? There's no exemptions to morality, very simple. So why are these things so difficult, right? And I think one reason is because most people have grown up in authoritarian households. And learn to obey authority, and then you go into government school and again learn to obey authority, and then statism gets really beat into you over many years through repetition, and you can't just uproot that with a few phrases, right? You need a lot more than that, and what's really tragic is that when we talk to people, like we read all these books, we listen to these personalities, these YouTubers and podcasts, and we know, quite a bit about this stuff, and then somebody can say a couple of sentences full of logical fallacies and then claim that they win. And it's like, that what you just said requires a whole article to debunk. I know it's easy that you said it right there and you think you win, but really you need to learn economics to learn why that's false.
No, totally. It's weird, isn't it? There's a lot of there's a term in the quote unquote truth movement called gatekeepers, and there's definitely a lot of gatekeepers out there. There's definitely a lot of people that are there waiting for you when you come out of the lie, so to speak. Right. And they're waiting for you in like this goal, and they're like, right, come into my net, and then you come into them, and then you're like, oh, I've got the truth, and you go out there and start spreading the truth, and then like a year later, you're like, oh fuck, that guy was a bit wrong. Am I allowed to swear? Am I allowed to swear in here?
No, it's fine. It's fine. No problem.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just
no
making
worries.
Sure.
No worries.
And then you kind of come out and you're like, oh fucking hell, that wasn't really true. But I've said I was wrong about 100,000 times in my life, and I'll probably say it another 100,000 times in my life, and that's the beauty of growing. But I think there's no issue in being wrong. I think as long as you can admit it and grow from it, that's a good thing. So yeah.
Right, yeah, and I've always thought that voluntarists are one of the most humble of people, because in order to try to understand voluntarism, you have to be a truth seeker, right? You have to put all of your beliefs, your previously held beliefs, onto the altar of logic and reason, and you have to put them to the test. You have to scrutinize them, and if they don't pass the test, you discard them, without prejudice, without bias. You say, I analyze this, logically and rationally, and it doesn't meet up, it doesn't make sense, you have to discard it. You can't hold on to things for emotional reasons, for mushy-headed reasons. You can't do that, because that's exactly how statism and nationalism flourishes, right? It's not based on truth and reason. We didn't come to this through truth and reason. We came to it basically because that's how we were raised, and that's how we were indoctrinated into it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't. It's an individual process ultimately, and that's the beauty of anarchy in its truest form. Anarchy meaning cause, an coming from the Latin without, and archy coming from the Greek archon meaning ruler. So anarchy really means without rulers, not without rules. Yeah. There are always rules. There is a natural law in place, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But there are always rules. Yeah. But having no rule is completely different to having no rules. So we all know this stuff innately. But what happens is when we come through the sausage machine of education, it gets beaten out of us to the point where we become slaves, essentially, to some degree. So, yeah. Yeah,
and the idea that people equate rulers with rules and how they're both intertwined is I think it was Murray Rothbard. He said the greatest non sequitur argument is that people equate government with civilization, right? You have everything. When we talk about capitalism and about all the the technological advances in in health and longevity and medicine and sanitation and heating and all this kind of stuff, right? Transportation. They're like, that's because of government. and it's like, what?
Yeah, the same people that are taking away those rights and those liberties and those jobs every day. The government are just essentially mobsters that take away those things every day.
Right.
They don't give us those things. The people doing it give us those things.
Yeah. So. I mean, the fundamental idea of statism is that some people have a moral exemption, or say an exemption from morality that other people don't have, so they can act in what would deem to be considered immoral. That if the individual were to act like that, they would, they can run up an $18 trillion debt, no problem. They can, steal people's money and call it taxation, no problem. They can murder people overseas and call it the war on terror, no problem. It's, and so that's the idea that these people have the moral exemption, right? No business that's working, independently of the state, not relying on subsidies or lobbyists to erect barriers to entry and regulations. No, truly private business can operate that way.
I know, it's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah, they claim to support business. That's this weird cognitive dissonance in these people, that they claim to support the things that they don't support themselves, that they don't do themselves. They claim to support free market, but they give bankers and corporations deals that they don't give an ordinary businessman.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So there is no free market in our countries where they should be.
Right.
Well, there is a little bit, of course, but in general, en masse.
Yeah.
So it's one rule for them and one rule for us, and that's not really capitalism, is it?
Right. And people, when they confuse, civilization and the state, it's also the other argument is, we are the people, we're the ones who elected them, so we have the power to get them out of office and put new people in there. So if anything the government does bad, it's our fault because we are the people.
Well, these are the same politicians that lie to us about everything, yet we think we can trust them by getting them into power. It's a weird, again, it goes back to that cognitive dissonance, but except we have it as well. It's not just them,
right?
Because we do the same thing, not necessarily you and I, but en masse humans.
Yeah, right.
We, it's like an abusive relationship. I look at our relationship with government as an abusive relationship. Like, you go back to your house and you've got this wife beater or husband beater. And they're like, no, I'm going to be better tomorrow. I promise, I'm going to be better tomorrow.
Right.
And, and then you're like, oh, I believe you. Yeah, you're going to be better tomorrow. And you come in and they beat you again. And you're like, okay, but tomorrow is definitely going to be better. This time it's for real. It's true. And you go out and they beat you again. And we keep going back to them. Right, it's like a horrible, abusive relationship. Right. That's what government is to us,
Yeah, it's called battered citizen syndrome.
Yeah, it's like this weird Stockholm syndrome, but it's everywhere. It's
Right.
bizarre,
Right,
really
right, right.
bizarre.
Yeah, Stockholm syndrome, definitely. That's what it is also. So please, can you get into your music and how how it's transformed over the years? From before you were an anarchist and then now, and the changes that you made in it.
Well, as I say, growing up pretty poor, I understood that things weren't right. There's something wrong in the world. I didn't really understand why, but I knew that there was something not right. Most people were not getting treated fairly, and we can go into voluntary interaction and how that is fair. But in general, I realized there was something not right, and I guess that I always knew that. How I got into anarchism and how I got into freedom in general was reading these kinds of books by these people like David Icke and Michael Tsarian, and looking at Mark Passio lectures, and reading books by Ayn Rand and Larkin Rose as well, and those kinds of people. And I think how that influences me, how that influenced my music and how that influenced my songwriting was to realize, oh shit, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person in the world that understands something isn't right. And I'm not the only person in the world that realizes that we're all kind of getting screwed by these people. And that these people are only out for themselves. And what I thought was capitalism is actually just corporatism. And that essentially, I kind of managed to use that in my music because I recognized that a lot of other people saw that as well. I only ever really write about something that influences me. If I'm honest, I don't write music to influence people, because that kind of goes against the point of what we're talking about with anarchism. Everything's about your own choice and your own free will. So I just write something that means something to me, and that matters to me. But this thing really mattered to me. I was just like, I don't really have much choice in my life, personally. I don't really get to choose what I want to do. I live in a free-range farm, which we call freedom. This country, or this world that we're supposed to live in, and we can liken this to America as much as Britain. We don't really live in freedom. We live in free-range farm freedom. So as long as we're in the pen, then we're in freedom.
Right.
But don't go over the fence,
Right.
because then you're an extremist. And right now, even this conversation is over the fence. So I think I was interested in what was going on over the fence.
Right.
I've always been interested in that. Why is over the fence? Why is that not the freedom? Why is the free range farm freedom? So it's all about questioning. Questions lead you to these kinds of researchers and lead you to these kind of people. We're quite grateful that you and I can stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us, who put out this kind of information that allowed us to be able to have this kind of conversation. But essentially, that's what it was. It was just a lot of asking questions. And if you ask the right questions, you'll hopefully meet the right people, I think.
It reminds me of a quote by Voltaire, which is, to find out who controls you, discover who you can't criticize.
Yeah, that's a good one, that is. Yeah.
Right. And so, if anybody has if anybody claims, we live in a free country, well, I mean, since the, in the United States, the NDAA and the Patriot Act and things like that, where people can get indefinitely detained for no particular reason, no specific reason, without due process for an indefinite amount of time, and they don't have to contact your friends, your family. You just black bagged and you disappear from the face of the earth. Really? That's a free country.
Yeah. Well, you can get arrested for carrying a plant.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
So I mean, I joke about this a lot. I say, I love freedom, especially the fact that I can get thrown in a cage for growing plants in my garden. Freedom rocks. So it's just the mind boggles, obviously. So there we are.
Yeah, I liken our situation as voluntarists and anarchists now to the abolitionists of the 19th century, because they opposed chain slavery on moral grounds alone, basically, right? Because you can imagine the same arguments that slave owners would give to the abolitionists. Well, who would pick the cotton, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Who would pick the cotton? And their whole livelihood, their whole economy, I guess crony capitalist economy, it was based on slavery, right? And so in their mind, it's necessary because of that. But, the abolitionists would say, it doesn't matter who's going to pick the cotton. The whole thing is immoral. We shouldn't own people. That's it. There's no question.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say I know the future. I know, that there's going to be these huge machines that are going to pick, vast amounts of crops and harvest them. I'm not saying, so that it's kind of the same thing with us where people try to say, well, how are you going to deal with the poor? How are you going to build roads? How are you going to do national defense? Which is kind of ridiculous because national, immediately implies a state. How are you going to, treat sick people without, Medicare, all this kind of crap? And again, they're trying to make us be fortune tellers, which is why I don't really like to dwell on those things, because you get onto really long tangents and it gets really ridiculous after a while because you're just guessing. And so I stick to the moral argument alone. Can you delegate a right you don't have? If I can't steal from my neighbor to fund my child's education, how can I delegate that right to a politician to do that and call it property tax?
Well, I think this is this is the, it's weird, isn't it? Because when you know about this stuff, it seems so ludicrous. But of course, when you're coming into it, so I have people from all over the political spectrum that know about me, that know about my band. So I'm going to have to take it on the value of the fact that a lot of people are not going to know what we're talking about.
Right.
Which is cool, because I didn't always know what we're talking about. So that's fine.
Yeah.
But, if we can look at it in terms of the slave trade, and that's a really funny example, because there were people, how can I say this in a way that's going to make sense now? There were people when that was happening that were seen as extremists to say that there's something not right about this. This isn't right. Let's fight against this tyranny. Oh no, you're an extremist. You would have been called a conspiracy theorist in those days or some shit like that. So we're kind of living in a different age now where this tyranny affects everybody. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what skin pigment you have. It doesn't matter what background you come from. It's the fact that this tyranny affects everybody. And now the extremists are people who talk about what we're talking about. The extremists have changed completely to what they were a couple of 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. But the moral implications are exactly the same. And what we're talking about is exactly the same.
Right.
We're just talking about something. It's just changed from kind of being physical to being economic, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So, I think I think Charles Bukowski said slavery wasn't abolished; it was just expanded to include all people. All races.
Yeah, I mean that's the ultimate form of slavery, isn't it? It's that you can get everybody on the same boat, and they don't know it. I mean, David Icke said that, and he said it right. You don't have to agree with everything he says. I don't agree with everything he says, but that's irrelevant. The point is, he said something really poignant, which was he said that the greatest prison is a prison cell where you can't see the bars.
Right. Nice.
And we can see that now. Mm-hmm. We can see that in the world that we have right now, and this is it. It's the beauty is, I have my iPhone, so I'm free. That's it. It doesn't matter about the NDAA or the Patriot Act or the Terrorism Act in Britain, which can do exactly the same thing as the NDAA or the Patriot Act, where we can, our government will imprison anybody without trial based on no evidence, based on things like internet searches, for God's sakes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's how bad it's got. And that's happened to people. So, but hey, we've got our iPhones, we can get laid on the weekend, we can go out to a club. So, we're free, right? We're happy, we're good, we're looked after.
Right.
We're in our free range freedom.
Right, exactly. So please go into your what you mentioned about the British common law and the Magna Carta, and you draw parallels to that with anarchy. So
absolutely. Well, the Magna Carta was made in 1215, and it's essentially the British Constitution, so similar to the American Constitution. But what came from the Magna Carta was British common law, which there's a huge difference. The main difference between this and the American Constitution, from what I know about the American Constitution, is that the British common law only highlights three main points of crime, which are very similar to anarchy, if not the same, which is injury, loss, or harm. So in British common law, you can only commit a crime if it's injury, loss, or harm.
If there's a victim.
Yes, because there's a victim.
Right.
And that's by law. And that still is by law in this country today. The difference is, of course, through the House of Commons, through the House of Lords, so through the government, what we've got is legislation and statutes. And these statutes and these legislations masquerade as law, but they're not law. They're statutes and legislation.
Right.
The law is exactly the same as it was in 1215, technically.
Yeah.
And if you know your stuff, and I've known people that do know their stuff, they owe £40,000 in taxes that they've never paid. But because they know common law, and they understand the Magna Carta, and they understand how to contract the system, they've never paid those tens of thousands of pounds in taxes, and they still live a normal life off the grid. And the way that it works is through contract. So everything is about consent, right? Everything is about contract. I do believe in contracts. I think if you consent to something and somebody else consents to something, then therefore you've agreed to that. If you don't agree to it, then that's a completely different thing altogether. But if you've decided that you agree to this thing, then you should be held responsible to that. And so should the government or whoever. The beauty of British common law, which derives from the Magna Carta, is you can actually, when you get a tax bill, you do offer them something else in return that doesn't have to be the money. I'll give you a good example. I know a person, I don't want to mention any names on air, but I know a person that went, who was taken into court because of the taxes that they owed. And the judge said to them, all right, you need to get in the dock. And he goes, I'm not going to get in the dock because I'm not a criminal. And they had to throw out the case because this person didn't go into the dock. And they're like, he sat down in the desk and said, I'm going to represent myself. And they said, right, next case. Because he didn't get into the dock and he didn't admit that he was a criminal, and because there was no crime committed,
right,
there was no injury, harm, or loss, they didn't actually prosecute him for it.
Wow,
so,
nice, fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I guess would the equivalent here be the sovereign citizen? Is that kind of the equivalent to that?
Yes, yeah, it is. It's very similar. And the issue is with common law and with the Magna Carta, and I do want to warn people about this that might be listening in England. I don't follow it because I'm a touring artist, and frankly, it takes a hell of a lot of energy to do that. It takes a lot of fighting the system, and although it's law and although it's right, it really, really takes your whole life force to do that, to follow that law.
Right.
You really need to know your stuff. You really, really need to know your research, and you need to know the law inside out to be able to do it. So I wouldn't recommend anybody do it, unless, of course, you're committed to it,
right,
and that's different. But I don't want anybody to listen to this and go, right, I'm going to do that common law, and then their life gets fucked up and goes upside down because they get arrested for not paying taxes, because it does take, I know people that have done it successfully, but it takes a huge amount of effort to do that. So you have to be really committed to it. But it's very, very similar. Yeah, it's essentially committing yourself to being a free man of the land.
Yeah.
So yeah, sovereign citizen, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, my approach to taxes is, I just explained to them, very plainly, how taxation is theft. I don't really say that first because that phrase is kind of jarring to most people. So you got to ease into it. You got to, you talk about consent and you say, what's the definition of theft, right? It's the confiscation of somebody else's property without their permission.
Sure.
Okay, now define taxation. And I've done that to some people, and they're like, I know where you're getting at, and you're wrong.
Yeah. It's like, I agree with you, but you're still wrong.
Right.
It takes a lot of work to do that. That's why it takes a lot of energy and a lot of life force to do that. And that's what I'm saying. It's the kind of thing you can't just say you're going to do it.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, you have to commit to it, and you have to do it properly, because it's not something you can half-ass, And that's the issue.
Yeah, it's a very touchy subject because a lot of some anarchists are more, I guess, I don't know, courageous, I'll say, and will be as purely anarchist as possible. Live an agorist lifestyle, and I try to do that as well. And I don't plan on teaching my kids how to pay their taxes. I don't plan. I really want to encourage people to stop paying taxes, right? Because I think living an agorist lifestyle, which is basically living, without the watchful eye of the state, right? Not complying with regulation, not doing all this stuff. You're a peaceful person. You're just not complying, right, with all these ridiculous mandates and regulations and taxes, right? And so, I'm really hoping that I think like my channel is peaceful anarchism, right? And I think peaceful non-compliance is one of the best ways that we can nullify the state and eradicate statism, right?
Yeah.
When people realize that it has no legitimacy whatsoever. It's just like any other mafia or gang. The only difference is it has legitimacy, right? Like the mafia comes to your town and they demand payment for their for their quote unquote services. They can't call it taxation because they don't have legitimacy, right? It's just called threats of violence, right, and intimidation, right? But when the government does it, it's called laws and taxes, right? And it's essentially the same thing. So
it's interesting you mentioned that actually, because one of the things that for people that are unaware of this that I guess would be worth mentioning, it's not to say that we don't. I'm not taking. Well, I'm assuming both of us, but for me particularly, I can say that it's not like we're saying that people who are poor shouldn't be looked after. It's not that we're saying, or I'm saying anyway, that people who are disabled and incapable of looking after themselves through physical incapabilities shouldn't be looked after. That's not the point at all. So a lot of people will hear this stuff as a new thing and think, oh, well, these people are saying that, you have to be selfish and look after the individual only. Okay. But that's really corporatism again. That's not what we're talking about. Being a person of free will and a person of free choice up here is about saying, well, I do want to look after those people, but I want to look after those people of my own choice. I don't want to be forced to look after those people. I don't want to have somebody turn up my house one day with armed police breaking into my house because I haven't been forced to pay for those people. Right. I want to support those people, and I'd be happy to give some of my income to help those people of my own choice. Right. That's the difference. It's all about choice.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, choice and consent. Yeah, forceful confiscation of funds is not compassion.
Yeah, exactly. Because what happens is that it's kind of completely taking away the compassion from the situation. What it's doing is actually, if anything, it's completely obviously incompassionate, but it's essentially saying to you, look, you're not a good human being because you won't help these people, so I'm going to make you help these people. But while you do it, I'm going to take the majority of the money that you give me and I'm going to steal it from you, and I'm going to use it to bomb people in other countries, and I'm going to use it to give myself champagne, and you're going to eat shit food, and they're going to have shit healthcare, and they're going to get 5 pence from every pound or 5 cents from every dollar that we steal from you. And so I'd much rather say, hey, look, if you're going to take £50 from me every week and give it to the poor people that need it, how about you just let me keep it and I'll give it to them, and you don't use it on the shit that you want to use it on. Right. How about that? But we don't have any choice. That's the problem. They're not giving us a choice. They're holding us at gunpoint saying, right, I'm going to do this regardless of whether you want to do it or not. And there's no freedom in that. No. It's a free-range farm freedom.
Yeah. It reminds me of a meme which talks about what you just said, which is, I will help the poor because I want to help the poor. I will feed the hungry because I want to feed the hungry. I'll clothe the people who are cold because I want to clothe them, I'll do this because I'm an anarchist, not because I'm told to or because I'm forced to, but because I want to. And that makes all the difference, right? Choice, having the consent, the ability to choose, it's completely, it's just earth shattering, the change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything's about choice. There is no freedom without choice, and kind of goes back to the British common law we talked about, which is as long as there's no injury, loss or harm, there's no crime, which is really what anarchy is, of course. So it goes, we are never going to have freedom without being able to make those choices. Right. So we're only going to have the freedom that's given to us, and therefore it's never going to be freedom. Mm-hmm. However nice, however comfortable it is. The only reason that, as you said earlier, that slavery has included everybody is because they realized it didn't work.
Right.
People rebel against the prison that they can see.
Right, right.
But if you can make people think they're free, and therefore you've got a willing slave,
Right.
you've got and that's the beauty of it, and you've got to hand it to them. These people are extremely smart. They've done it really, really well. I'm not saying that I agree with them, of course, but you've got to hand it to them. They've done it extremely well.
Yeah, yeah. It's the grand delusion, the grand lie. But let me ask you a question. The other people in your band, are they also anarchists? Like, where are they on the spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the guys in Torous have not necessarily had the experience I've had in life, or read the same kind of books that I do, but their hearts are in the right place, and they're intelligent guys, and they understand this. They understand it as much as I do. They might not be able to articulate it the same way that I do, but they understand it the same way I do. They want to be free, and they want to just do what they want to do with their lives, and they don't want to harm anyone in the process. So it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I think most people, most people are anarchists, but they don't know it.
Yeah, yeah,
it's like
precisely.
it's like, do you want people to tell you what time to wake up, or to tell you what time to go to work, or what to eat, or where to go to work, or who to date, or who to marry, or where to live? Do you like that? Do you like rules like that?
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
then you're an anarchist.
Well, it's weird, isn't it? Because the definition of coercion is the action or practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. So that's what the government does with us every day, right? Yeah. So through coercion, that's how we live in the societies that we live in. So by definition, coercion is an immoral thing. And if you said that about anybody else but government, people would go, oh yeah, that's an immoral thing. My husband comes back and forces me to do things I don't want to do, or my wife comes back forcing me to do things I want to do, or my boss at work makes me work more than I should do, than I've contracted to do. Any of these things, whatever situation you want to use, I could use it in the music industry, and we could say I signed with a record label, and they brought in clauses that I hadn't signed on for, or whatever. But government uses this every single day, this coercion, right. And people don't recognize it. I mean, I don't want to go into the term of vaccines, for example. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I'm going to use the term as a good example, where a friend of mine is a very intelligent guy. He's a doctor. And he said, it's important that people take these vaccines. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with vaccines or right. I'll let you guys decide on that. But in Australia, they were making them mandatory. If you don't take vaccines, in Australia, they'll cut off your benefits or your social security or whatever. Now, again, I know that goes into taxation, but that's it. Yeah. Stick on topic. The whole point that I'm trying to make is that the government are forcing you through coercion. If you don't do this vaccine with your child, we're going to take away your money. And he said, it's good, it's for health and that kind of thing. And again, he's an intelligent guy. And I said, well, it may be for health, but because it's through coercion, it's an immoral act regardless. If you're forcing somebody to do it, especially you're forcing an entire population to do it, it's not a good thing. Whether it's for right or wrong, it's not a good thing. Coercion will never be a good thing. It's always immoral. It's never legitimate. And that's that. That's just the way that it is. Whether it's an individual, whether it's a government, whether it's a mafia, whether it's whatever.
Yeah, my kids, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and but they're both not vaccinated whatsoever. And for the longest time, I read up on books about it, and I talked about, from the perspective of how, and how unhealthy it is, and all the ingredients in the vaccines, and the pharmaceutical companies that produce the vaccines, how they're a fascist corporate group, and sure. and then I realized that another way to talk about it, which is I think more amenable to most people, is through the idea of what you just said, coercion. That if something is really good for people, wouldn't they flock to it voluntarily, right? Yeah. If something was really effective and successful, like somebody makes a product that's really awesome, sure, maybe you need to advertise in the beginning, but word will spread that this is an awesome product and you're going to be a wealthy person, right? So,
yeah.
So you don't need to force good ideas onto people, right? You only need to force bad ideas onto people. And it's like,
interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, carry on, mate. I was going to say, it's interesting you mentioned that because it's perfect for music. If we look at the music industry and the arts industry in general, if I was to write really bad music, hopefully you don't think I write really bad music, but obviously what I would need is a record label, and I'd need an industry to continually throw that down people.
Right.
But if you write genuinely good stuff and you make a good product, whether it's music or whether it's a good beer or whether it's a good cigarette or whatever, but whatever the product is that you're into, you will draw people in. Anything good generally will draw people in. And I've actually always bought this ideology through music. And I've always thought, if you create something good, you will draw people in.
Sure.
Historically, it's always proven to work, whatever the product is. And I believe that I write and our band make good music. We play well live. And that's why we draw people in. That's why people come to pay to see us and they pay for our music. And I think that that's the way to go with any business. Whether your business is vaccines or whether your business is anything, if you do something good, it will draw people in, as you said. The issue that you have is if you're not drawing people in without the media forcing it down you, then you've got to ask the question, why is it not drawing people in? Unless you've got that brainwashing machine pushing it down people all the time.
Right. Yeah, that's such an important concept to get across to people, when they say, we need the government to, do this, to tax the rich, to regulate this industry, to, put barriers, to build a wall, to introduce tariffs to this overseas business, It's like, it's so sad that, people don't understand that every time they say we need the government to do blank, they're basically saying we need guns pointed this way to either prevent this from happening or force this to happen.
The funny thing that I've always recognized with this situation is that they don't realize it's the same people doing the things that they're talking about that are wrong.
Right.
Yeah. So you have these people that say things like, oh, well, the war in the Middle East is wrong. 100% agree. I do 100% agree. And then they'll say something like, so what we need is the government to give us laws to stop this from happening. I'm just like, hold on a second.
You started off good. Good.
The same people that you just said were fucking up other countries, and you want the same people to fuck up our country. Let me just take a breather for a second. Let me think about this. 1 second. Let me have a second. So this gang of psychopaths are fucking up multiple places, and you understand that this gang of psychopaths are fucking up multiple places, and what you want this gang of psychopaths to do is fuck up your place as well. It's just bizarre, really. It's like this cognitive dissonance again. It goes back to this holding two opposing beliefs at the same time.
Right.
You believe that they're evil, but you believe that you can make them not be evil, and it goes kind of, yeah, they might not be evil, but you're voting for the same people and you're asking them to do the same thing of the people you're saying evil about. So it's not even like they're saying Obama or David Cameron is evil, so we need somebody new. And when that new person comes in, they say the same thing. So they're not saying, they're using the same example. I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
They're using the same person as the same example. So the same person that commits the atrocity that they're talking about, they use that same person as an example to give them freedom.
Yeah, there's a great video by Larkin Rose that I like to share with people. If You Were King, that video where basically, goes through, why everything that a ruler will do will inevitably harm people. Always. Even if it's with the best of intentions, forcing people to eat their vegetables, whatever, forcing people to exercise, anything they do that they think will have a general good will always have negative repercussions, right?
For sure.
And even if they don't do anything, they're still, in order to live, they're collecting taxes, and that's the initiation of force, and that's the violation of consent, right? So sure. Any government, doesn't matter, doesn't matter if Plato's philosopher king is sitting on the throne, still... It's still immoral, right?
You know what? I think the issue comes down. It comes down to a simple view of consent, of course. Now I know that we know this, but a lot of people don't know this. So I think maybe it's worth us talking about that simple version of consent. As I say, a lot of people that know who I am don't know. I have people that follow me from all sorts of ends of the political spectrum, and I used to follow a lot of political parties and stuff like that. So I'm not immune to any of this stuff. I've been a victim to it as much as everybody else. One thing that I want to point out when it comes to things like consent is you've got to ask yourself, did you ever agree to these things? Did this person ever say to themselves that they agreed to it? They've told you, but a salesman can come to your door and tell you they're going to sell you this product. You buy it, and then afterwards you realize it's a shitty product. These people don't ever sign an agreement. None of these people that come into power ever sign an agreement so they're going to do what they say they're going to do. Right. Yet we continually vote for them and continually buy their shit like an abusive relationship. So all I'd ask people to do is think, these are the same liars, and I've heard you say this before and you said it really well, that these are the same liar politicians we can continually vote for, right? And that we continually ask for their perspective on our freedom. We ask them to give us freedom. We're born free, but we're asking for freedom. Yeah. It makes no sense. Why were we ever told that we didn't have a freedom? Who gave us that idea in the first place? Who told us, oh, wait a minute, you're not free, but if you vote for this guy, you're going to be free? Yeah. We were born free, you know, that's the point. So the mind boggles.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just the idea of having a ruler, you know, it really dictates that you're not free. And, you know, if you have to ask permission for freedom, then that's kind of a contradictory right there. yeah. You know, it's kind of like, yeah, you're free to do what we tell you, or you know, it's kind of like it's kind of like telling someone to think for yourself, and they're like, okay, but they're not thinking for themselves. You have to ask them to think for themselves. Right, yeah. So it's like it's a bizarre situation that we're in right now, but it's a great situation because this is the first time, perhaps in forever, that we're in a situation where we're actually questioning it en masse. Yeah, and these rulers, you know, the thing you pointed out about them lying is that there's no accountability, right? So you know, Obama, you know, is on you know, the campaign, and he's you know, talking about everything that he's going to do on the campaign, and then when he gets into office, he does the exact opposite of what he says he's going to do. And what can the people do about it? Absolutely nothing.
Part of the problem is once you've put that X on the ballot box, you've kind of given your consent to that. Not that you've obviously openly done it. I'm not saying that anybody's openly said, well, let's keep Guantanamo Bay open, or let's go to Syria. But of course, they don't see it that way. These psychopaths don't see it that way. They see it in their mind, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, but from my understanding, the way that they see it is, oh, well, this person said X, so I'm going to do it. And they've got no choice. I think that's the issue. We have to stop crossing the X to the people that are doing this shit, and start thinking for ourselves and start acting for ourselves and stop asking other people to act for us. And there's an issue with the slave mentality, isn't there? We still have this slave mentality as human beings, where we still want people to control our lives because it's easier. It's much easier to have somebody else to tell us what to do. It's much easier to have somebody to say to us, okay, we're going to do this, and for us to go, well, I don't agree with that, but it's much easier to not agree with it than have to do anything about it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. You know, so as long as I've got my iPhone and I can get laid on the weekend and I can get drunk, you know, the important thing is I can do all the fun things and I can pretend that I'm fighting the system on my Saturday night in the club while I'm having this conversation with somebody. But I'll go back to doing everything that I do anyway. Right. Rather than actually going, I'm not going to vote for these fuckers. Fuck them. I'm going to do what I think is moral, and I'm going to live my own life, and I'm not going to harm anybody. And if everybody did that, well, the world would change overnight, right?
Yeah. And it's a very lazy intellectual conclusion to say, you know, who should do this? The government. Who should do that? The government. Who should do this? The government. Whereas when that's swept away, and first, you know, by realizing the illegitimacy and immorality of the state, then we realize, okay, now how do we take care of each other without stealing from each other? How about that? How about that for a novel idea? Okay, stop initiating force against your neighbor and calling yourself, whatever name, or
A humanitarian.
I have a special costume that I'm wearing, so you have to obey me. It's like,
Yeah.
why don't you deal with your neighbor on a equal level, not a master slave level, but an equal level, right? As
Well,
peers.
think how much everything would change overnight if we dealt with everything ourselves. If I had a problem with my neighbor, like literally with my neighbor, and if I spoke to him person to person rather than calling it somebody external involved, let's take out the anarchy and the statism and stuff for a second, but just human being to human being. I went to this person and I spoke to him, and I had a problem with this person, but I spoke to them about it. I have a problem with you, and I'm going to tell you why I have a problem with you, and I'm going to reason with you, hopefully. And just doing that, even doing that on a basic level, would change the world overnight, because people would then start to go, right, I'm responsible for my way of life, and this person is causing me some harm, injury, or loss. So I'm going to go and speak to this person about this, and just dealing with it as a human being to a human being. And I've been surprised in my life, actually. I've been in a lot of sticky situations. I've been with in violent situations, not of my own doing, but I've been in the middle of them. And I've been quite surprised by how actually, by talking to somebody as a human being, as a person to person, that you can actually talk them down and you can kind of get around that situation and they can see reason. And I've seen that with people that you would never expect to see any reason from. So it can happen.
Cool.
And it is possible. And I think that if everybody did that in their lives, it wouldn't be the whole situation sorted out, but it would definitely be a hell of a lot closer than it is.
So Mark, are you suggesting that people don't call the police and don't call CPS and don't call the health department whenever they?
Well,
that would be anarchy, Mark.
Yeah.
How are you? What are you suggesting?
I would, but then I'd also point out that it is just a suggestion, and nobody to take my word as the gospel.
Right.
Because I'm just a guy. I'm not an expert in anything.
Right.
So I would never tell somebody to do anything. But if I was to suggest it, then yeah, I would suggest that you actually talk to somebody person to person, because Jesus, if everybody did that, how much things would change.
Yeah. I think part of what you're saying is, the way I would say it is, you have to take full responsibility for your own actions completely. Anything that you do in life, right, whether it be moral or immoral, all that I ask is that you take full responsibility. And I think, I forget who said it. Take what thou or do what thou wilt, and then endure the consequences. That's it. That's it. Do whatever you want to do, but accept the consequences of what you do, and that's it.
Yeah.
And if you live like that as a human being, I'm a happy man.
Well, there are two. It reminds me of something that Mark Passio said, which is there's only really one true divide in people. There's a lot of divide and conquer. So there's a lot, of course, your skin pigment darker or lighter than me, and that kind of shit, all irrelevant stuff. Or you believe in this, irrelevant stuff, or you're from this country, irrelevant stuff, right? But there's one true divide, and I believe that he's right in this, which is there are some people that believe that people have the ruling over their lives, and there are people that don't. That's the one true divide in society, in the world. The one true divide is people who believe in legitimacy to slavery and people that don't.
Right.
Or you can use the word authority, but because authority has so many different connotations, I'd rather just go straight to the point and say slavery. So, and I believe he's right on this. I really do think the main divide between people, and I've met people from all over the world, I've been all over the world, who I've met, and that is the one true divide that I've seen. The people that think there's a legitimacy to people controlling their lives, and people that think that they're free to control their own lives. I really think that's the one big divide.
Yeah, it's so sad when people, blame, Muslims, right, for their problems, or blame Mexicans, or blame South Americans, or blame, I don't know, pick your, I don't know, blame women, blame blacks, blame, pick your...
or even white people.
Or even white people, right, even white people.
Yeah, so it comes in so many different forms. This divide and conquer thing is hilarious, because it's like, the white man is the problem, or black people are the problem, or all this
Right.
kind of bollocks, all
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
shit that
Yeah.
isn't relevant because
Yeah.
you realize, oh, wait a minute, the same tyranny is causing us all the same fucking problem.
Right.
When you recognize that, it's laughable because you're like, oh shit, we've been duped. And it's so simple. It
Mhm.
really is so simple. Yet, as a human race of nearly 7 billion people or whatever, we've been so easily duped.
Yeah.
The good news is it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
That's the good news. As much as it's difficult, it's actually good because, oh, wait a minute, it's simple. And we've actually got a chance of getting out of this shit because it's so simple. So I do believe that as long as you're being human to human, you're looking after yourself, you're getting your own garden in order, metaphorically, then I think that you're going to be okay, and people want to emulate you. People want to, be better themselves rather than going into other people's gardens and start fiddling around with their shit.
Oh yeah.
So that's my opinion on it. Anyway.
Oh yeah, that's my constant message is if you want to improve the world, you want to make the world a better place, stop appealing to an institution of violence and power and corruption and evil, okay? And just start focusing on yourself, okay? You focus on yourself, you improve yourself, you make yourself into a peaceful, rational, moral, compassionate, kind, gentle person, and people will want to be that. And if you're something that that people find value and people like how you act and people like what you say, like you said, they're going to emulate you, and that's how true change happens, right? You focus on yourself first, and if you want to improve the world, yourself and your family, your kids, that kind of thing. So be the change. That's the ultimate message. So Mark, I don't want to keep you too long, but please tell my listeners, just plug your sites again, how they can reach you if they want to follow your work, and anything else you want to, any other last message you want to give to my listeners.
Sure. Well, you can obviously find the band's website, www.torous.co.uk. Torous is spelled TOROUS.co.uk. Best thing to do is go to the website and you can find all the social media and stuff there. I guess my last message, my ultimate message in my life, really, is all about freedom of expression. I mean, music is the universal language. Music relates to everybody, wherever you are in the world, wherever point in time that you are. And I really believe in freedom of expression. I really believe that if you stick by your convictions and you're not harming anybody, you should do anything that you believe in, and you should do whatever you want to do with your life. And all I try to do with music is be myself and express my individuality. And all I want to see from people is to do the same thing in whatever area they're in. I mean, I think this is a really sad thing that music and art seems to be the only industry that you get to be yourself, but you should be able to be yourself in every industry, in every way of life. It shouldn't just be like, oh, well, music and art, you can express yourself, but you're an accountant, so, you have to be this kind of guy. It should just be like, well, you're just yourself in whatever field that you're in, and you should be able to express that, and you should be able to do it without coercion. You should be able to do it without force, as long as you're not harming anybody.
Exactly.
So I think that's all I want people to do: not harm anybody, be themselves, be free, and it's all up here. Freedom happens here.
Yeah, exactly. Statism is a state of mind.
Absolutely.
And I love you remind me of the a picture of the Federal Registry, and then it says there's only one rule: do no harm. Right. Also, don't take other people's stuff, but do no harm. Don't hurt people. Basically.
I mean, my motto is do no harm, but take no shit. So
That's good too. Very nice.
Yeah. So that's my personal motto there.
So another thing I like to ask my guests before we sign off is, what's your favorite quote of all time?
I'd probably say it was that David Icke one where I said earlier, which was the, people think they're free if they don't see the bars, because I think that's got so many good connotations to it, and it really is relevant in the world that we're in today. So people think they're free if they don't see the prison bars, and I think that's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. It's such a powerful. It's like the Matrix. You can be living in it, and you really, really think you're free, and until you just take that red pill, you wake up and you're like, holy crap. What have I been living in?
Yeah. Actually, there is another one, which is the biggest fear that the biggest prison that people live in is the fear of what other people think.
Nice. Yeah.
I like that one.
So true. Or you also made me realize this meme I saw of the Night of the Living Dead, the walking, the zombies, and it says about voting election day. It's like
Right. Yeah.
some people one person commented, they're like, I call it Night of the Living Voters or something like that.
I worry about this zombie apocalypse because I'm starting to think that it's upon us now. Because the zombie apocalypse is these smartphone things here, and the zombie apocalypse is this everybody being tuned into social media all the time. And maybe that is the zombie apocalypse.
Right,
maybe
right.
that was the prophecy all along. Yeah.
Yeah, but people expect to see brain, eating and frothing at the mouth, and
We see that
kind
on social media. Yeah, so we see that already. It's just it's not as physical, but it's still there. The frothing at the mouth.
not as obvious, but yeah.
Yeah.
But awesome conversation, Mark. Thanks a lot for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to help me out, you can donate through Bitcoin, PayPal, or Patreon. Links are below. Patreon.com/Peaceful Anarchism to help me out. I am a capitalist, so if you find value in this content, please feel free to donate and help me out. I like interviewing fascinating people like Mark here, and I want to continue to do so, and monetary compensation is always appreciated and encouraged, right? If you want to see something more of in the world, you vote with your dollar. That's the only democracy I support, voting with your dollars. Right? Put your money where your mouth is. That's how it is.
Yeah, man.
So thanks a lot, Mark, for a wonderful conversation. This is Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network, and theconsciousresistance.com, and theseedsofliberty.com. Wishing everyone have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.